the box between them. Fred entered, his smile frozen in place. "Diana," he said softly, "what are you doing in my office?" The room felt smaller, the air heavier. The box sat between them like a silent witness. Diana steadied herself. "I was looking for clarity," she said. Fred's eyes flicked to the box, then back to her. "Clarity," he repeated. "That can be complicated." The door clicked shut behind him, and the mysteries of Gellis Living deepened once more. Book 1, Finale. Chapter 1. The evening that didn't feel right. Evening settled over Gellis Living in the same gentle way it always did. Soft hallway lights dimming to their amber glow, televisions murmuring behind half-closed doors, the faint scent of lavender from the diffuser Maribel always plugged in after dinner. It should have been comforting, predictable, safe, but tonight something in the air felt staged. Diana Marquez sat in her recliner near the window, watching the last streaks of daylight fade behind the courtyard trees. She tried to focus on the pattern of the branches, the way they swayed in the wind, but her mind kept drifting back to the dining room. Something had been off. She could feel it in her bones, the same way she used to sense when a storm was coming. She closed her eyes, trying to replay the evening clearly. June had been unusually quiet. Arthur had been unusually alert. And Fred had been everywhere. He'd moved through the dining room like a shadow with purpose, checking on tables, whispering to staff, glancing toward the hallway every few minutes as if waiting for someone, or watching for something. Diana rubbed her forehead. She hated when her thoughts felt slippery. Most days she was sharper than people gave her credit for. But sometimes, especially when she was tired, memories blurred at the edges, like a photograph smudged by a careless thumb. She took a slow breath. No, she remembered enough. Something was wrong tonight. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. "Diana?" Maribel's voice floated through the door. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" Diana straightened. "Come in." Maribel stepped inside, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She carried a small cup of evening meds and a warm smile, the kind that always made Diana feel seen, even on foggy days. "Just checking on you," Maribel said. "You seemed a little distracted at dinner." Diana hesitated. "Did something happen tonight?" Maribel blinked. "What do you mean?" In the dining room, everyone felt tense. Maribel laughed softly. "Oh, honey, it's just been a long day. New directives from upper management. Fred's been running around trying to keep everything straight." There it was again, that phrase. Upper management. Always invisible, always issuing orders, always tightening something. Diana swallowed. "What kind of directives?" Maribel waved a hand dismissively. "Nothing you need to worry about, just paperwork and schedules and you know how it is." But Diana noticed the way Maribel's eyes darted toward the hallway, the way her voice softened, the way she didn't quite meet Diana's gaze. She was hiding something. "Here," Maribel said, handing her the small cup. "Your evening meds." Diana stared at the pills, 2 white tablets, 1 pink, one she didn't recognize. "What's this one?" she asked, pointing. Maribel froze for half a second. Barely noticeable, but Diana caught it. "Oh, that? Just a supplement. Doctor's orders." Diana frowned. "I've never taken it before." Maribel's smile tightened. "It's new. Helps with sleep." Diana didn't argue. She simply placed the pills on her bedside table instead of taking them. Maribel didn't notice, or pretended not to. "Try to get some rest," Maribel said, backing toward the door. "Big day tomorrow." "For what?" Maribel paused. Too long, too carefully. "Oh, just activities, you know." She slipped out before Diana could ask anything else. The door clicked shut. Silence settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Diana stared at the pills. Her heart thudded. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. She stood slowly, steadying herself on the arm of the recliner. Her legs felt stiff, but she moved with purpose. She opened her door and peeked into the hallway. Empty. Except Arthur stood at the far end, half hidden in the shadow near the linen closet. His posture was rigid, his eyes fixed on something Diana couldn't see. "Arthur," she whispered. He didn't respond. She stepped closer. "Arthur, are you all right?" He turned his head slowly, his expression unreadable. "They're changing things," he murmured. "They think we don't notice, but we do." A chill ran through her. "Who?" she asked. Arthur blinked, as if waking from a trance. Oh, Diana. Didn't see you there." He smiled faintly, the moment gone. "Just stretching my legs." He shuffled away before she could ask anything else. Diana stood alone in the hallway, her pulse quickening. June's silence, Arthur's strange clarity, Maribel's hesitation, Fred's constant movement, the new pill, pieces of a puzzle she didn't yet understand. She returned to her room, closed the door and leaned against it. Something was happening at Gellis Living, and she was finally starting to see it. Here is Chapter 2 of your Book 1 finale, Maurice, written in the same cinematic, character-driven tone, fully aligned with episodes 1 to 4, and keeping Diana firmly in her role as a resident with mild cognitive impairment who is sharp at her core but underestimated by everyone around her. This chapter deepens the mystery, expands the emotional stakes, and brings June and Arthur into clearer focus as part of the unfolding tension. Chapter 2. The Things People Say When They Think You're Not Listening. Diana didn't sleep. She tried. She lay in bed, eyes closed, breathing slow, listening to the hum of the building, but her mind refused to settle. Every time she drifted towards sleep, her thoughts snapped back to the hallway, to Arthur's strange clarity, to the new pill Maribel couldn't explain. By the time morning light crept through her curtains, she felt wrung out and restless. Breakfast was already underway when she entered the dining room. The clatter of dishes, the low murmur of conversation, the smell of oatmeal and toast, all familiar, all comforting, but the atmosphere felt off again. June waved her over. "Diana, over here, dear." Diana slid into the seat across from her. June's hair was pinned up in its usual loose bun, but her eyes were sharper than usual, alert, darting around the room like she was tracking something. "You didn't sleep," June said, studying her face. "How do you know?" "You're wearing your cardigan inside out." Diana looked down. She was. She sighed. "Rough night." June leaned in. "You felt it too, didn't you?" Diana stiffened. "Felt what?" June lowered her voice. "The shift." Diana's pulse quickened. "What shift?" June opened her mouth to answer, but stopped abruptly as Fred entered the dining room. He moved with his usual calm confidence, but something in his posture was different today. Tighter, more controlled. He scanned the room like a man counting exits. June's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's been pacing since 6 this morning. I heard him in the hallway, back and forth, like a man waiting for a verdict." Diana followed Fred with her eyes. He paused near the kitchen door, speaking quietly to a caregiver. The caregiver nodded too quickly, eyes wide, nervous. "What's going on?" Diana murmured. June shook her head. "I don't know. But something's brewing." Arthur shuffled into the dining room then, moving slower than usual. He sat at a table near the window, staring at his hands. He looked unsettled. Diana excused herself and walked over. "Arthur, are you all right?" He didn't look up. "They changed my pills." Diana's breath caught. "When?" "This morning." He tapped his temple. "I can feel it, like someone rearranged the furniture in my head." Diana sat beside him. "Did they tell you why?" Arthur shook his head. "They never tell us why. They just say it's good for us." His voice trembled on the last word. Diana placed a hand on his arm. "You're not imagining things." Arthur looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment his eyes were clear, sharp, almost frightened. "They're doing something, Diana," he whispered. "Something they don't want us to understand." Before she could respond, a caregiver approached. "Arthur, sweetheart, let's get you back to your table." Arthur flinched. "I'm fine." The caregiver smiled tightly. "Of course you are, but breakfast is almost over." Diana watched as Arthur was guided away, her stomach twisting. When she returned to June's table, June was staring at her plate, jaw clenched. "What happened?" June asked. "They changed Arthur's meds." June's eyes widened. "Again? Again?" June nodded. "Yesterday, too, and the day before. He told me he felt foggy, like he was walking through soup." Diana's heart pounded. Why would they change his meds so often? June leaned closer. "Because they're testing something." Diana froze. "Testing what?" June shook her head. "I don't know, but I heard Maribel talking to one of the new girls last night. She said upper management sent new protocols, something about adjustments and compliance." Diana felt a chill crawl up her spine. "June," she whispered, "what exactly did you hear?" June hesitated, glancing around the room. "I heard Maribel say, 'Just follow the orders. Don't ask questions. Fred's handling the rest.'" Diana's breath caught. Fred. Fred, always in the middle, always mysterious. June reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Something's wrong here, Diana, and they think we're too old or too confused to notice." Diana swallowed hard. "But we do notice." June nodded. "We always have." A sudden clatter drew their attention. A caregiver had dropped a tray near the kitchen door. Fred was beside her in an instant, helping her pick up the pieces. His voice was calm, reassuring, but his eyes flicked toward the dining room, scanning the residents. Scanning for what? Or for who? Diana felt his gaze brush past her, and for a moment she wondered if he could sense her thoughts. If he knew she was starting to see the cracks. June leaned in again. "Be careful, Diana. They're watching more closely now." Diana nodded slowly. She could feel it too. The building was shifting. The routines were tightening. The staff were nervous. The residents were changing. And Fred was everywhere. Something was happening at Gellis Living, and whatever it was getting closer. Chapter 3. The Night the Building Shifted. Diana always believed buildings had moods. Some nights, Gellis Living felt warm and familiar, like an old friend humming softly in the background. Other nights, it felt restless, unsettled, like the walls were listening. Tonight, it felt like something was holding its breath. After breakfast, the day passed in a blur of routine. Morning stretches in the activity room, a puzzle June insisted on finishing, a brief nap that didn't quite take. But beneath the surface of every moment, Diana sensed a quiet tension threading through the halls. By evening, the feeling had grown stronger. She sat in the lounge near the fireplace, pretending to read a magazine. June was knitting beside her, though she kept dropping stitches. Arthur sat across the room, staring at the muted television, his expression distant. The staff moved differently tonight, quicker, quieter, more purposeful. They spoke in hushed tones. They checked their watches. They avoided eye contact. And Fred was everywhere again. He walked the halls with a calm that felt too controlled, too deliberate. Every time he passed the lounge, he scanned the room, not in a friendly, supervisory way, but like a man taking inventory. June leaned toward Diana. "He's been pacing since dinner." "I noticed." June's needles clicked nervously. "Something's happening." Diana nodded. "I know." A sudden burst of laughter echoed from the far end of the hallway, too loud, too forced. A caregiver quickly shushed someone, and the sound cut off abruptly. Arthur turned his head. "They're nervous," he murmured. Diana blinked. "Who?" Arthur didn't answer. His gaze drifted back to the television, but his fingers tapped anxiously against the arm of his chair. Diana stood. "I'm going to stretch my legs." June grabbed her wrist gently. "Be careful." Diana squeezed her hand. "I will." She stepped into the hallway. The air felt heavier here, like the building was exhaling something it had been holding in all day. She walked slowly, letting her feet guide her. She passed the activity room, the dining room, the small library. Everything looked normal, but the normalcy felt staged, like a set built for a play. As she approached the administrative wing, she heard voices. She stopped. The voices were coming from behind the half-closed door of the staff break room. "I don't like this," a caregiver whispered. "It feels wrong." "Orders are orders," another replied. "Fred said upper management wants it done tonight." Diana's breath caught. Upper management? Again. "What if the residents notice?" the first voice asked. "They won't," the second said. "Most of them won't remember by morning." Diana's stomach twisted. She stepped back, careful not to make a sound. Her heart pounded in her ears. She turned to leave, but froze when she saw Fred standing at the end of the hallway. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the break room door. His jaw was tight, his posture rigid. He listened for a moment, then stepped forward and gently closed the door, cutting off the voices. Then he turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Fred's expression was unreadable, calm on the surface, but something flickered beneath it. Something like worry or warning. "Diana," he said softly, "it's late. You should be resting." She swallowed. "I couldn't sleep." He nodded slowly. "I understand, but it's best to stay in the common areas tonight." "Why?" A pause. Too long. Too careful. "Just trust me," he said. Trust him. The words felt heavy. Fred stepped aside, gesturing toward the lounge. "Come on, let's get you back with the others." Diana hesitated, but she knew better than to push. Not tonight. Not with the building humming like this. She walked past him, feeling his eyes on her back. When she returned to the lounge, June looked up immediately. "What happened?" Diana sat beside her. "Something's going on." June nodded. "I knew it." Arthur leaned forward. "They're changing things again." Diana looked at him. "How do you know?" Arthur tapped his temple. "I can feel it." June shivered. "I don't like this." Neither did Diana. The building felt different now, tighter, more controlled. The staff moved with a strange urgency. The residents seemed restless. And Fred was trying too hard to look calm. Diana glanced toward the hallway. The lights flickered. Just once, but enough to make her heart skip. Something was happening at Gellis Living, and whatever it was happening tonight. Chapter 4. The trail no one was supposed to follow. Diana didn't mean to overhear things. People simply forgot she was there. It was one of the strange advantages of aging. People talked around you, over you, through you, as if your ears had retired along with your career. But Diana's ears worked just fine, better than fine, and tonight they caught every tremor in the building. After the lounge incident, she returned to her room, but sleep was impossible. Her thoughts spun in circles. Arthur's clarity, June's warnings, Fred's watchful presence, the staff's nervous whispers. The building felt like a stage set for a play she hadn't been given the script for. She paced slowly, her slippers whispering against the carpet. She paused at her door, listening. The hallway was quiet but not empty. She could sense movement, soft, purposeful, like people trying not to be heard. She cracked her door open. 2 caregivers hurried past, whispering urgently. "Upper management wants it logged tonight." Fred said to double-check the list. "I don't like this. What if someone notices?" "They won't. They never do." Diana's pulse quickened. She stepped into the hallway, careful to stay in the shadows. She wasn't sneaking. Not exactly. She was simply walking. Residents walked at night all the time. Insomnia was practically a hobby here. She followed the faint sound of voices toward the activity room. The door was slightly ajar, light spilling into the hallway. She approached slowly, her heart thudding. Inside, 2 caregivers stood over a stack of papers on the table. A list, a long one. Diana recognized some of the names: Residents from her wing, from memory care, from assisted living. She saw Arthur's name, June's, her own. "What's this?" the younger caregiver whispered. "Adjustments," the older one replied. "Upper management wants everyone on the new protocol by the end of the week. But some of them don't need changes. Doesn't matter. Orders are orders." Diana's breath caught. New protocol. Adjustments. Orders. She stepped back, her mind racing. She didn't understand everything, not yet, but she understood enough to feel the danger pressing in around her. She turned to leave, and nearly collided with Arthur. He stood in the hallway, eyes wide, breathing fast. "Arthur," she whispered, "what are you doing out here?" He shook his head. "Couldn't sleep." His gaze drifted toward the activity room. "They're making lists again." Diana swallowed. "You've seen this before?" Arthur nodded slowly. "Last year, when they changed the night staff, when they moved people around, when Mrs. Halpern—" He trailed off, his face tightening. Diana remembered Mrs. Halpern, a sweet woman with a sharp wit who had suddenly declined, then disappeared from the dining room entirely. Staff said she'd transferred to a higher care facility, but no one ever heard from her again. "What happened to her?" Diana whispered. Arthur's eyes glistened. "She didn't like the changes. She asked too many questions." A chill ran through Diana. "Arthur," she said gently, "what do you think is happening?" He leaned closer, his voice trembling. "They're testing something on us." Diana's breath hitched. "Testing what?" Arthur shook his head. "I don't know, but Fred knows. He always knows." Diana felt her stomach twist. Fred, always calm, always controlled, always in the middle, but never explaining, never denying, never confessing. She placed a hand on Arthur's arm. "Come on, let's get back to the lounge." But Arthur didn't move. "They're watching us," he whispered. "Tonight more than ever." Diana followed his gaze. Fred stood at the far end of the hallway. He wasn't moving, he wasn't speaking, he was just watching. His expression was unreadable, not angry, not suspicious, but something deeper. Something like regret or warning. Diana's heart pounded. Fred stepped forward, his voice calm. "Everything all right here?" Arthur stiffened. "Just walking." Fred nodded. "It's late. Let's get you both back to the common area." His tone was gentle, but firm, the kind of firmness that left no room for argument. Diana forced a smile. "Of course." Fred walked with them, his presence steady and quiet. But Diana could feel the tension radiating off him like a storm building behind a closed door. When they reached the lounge, June looked up immediately. "There you are," she said, relief flooding her face. "I was worried." Fred gave her a reassuring nod. "Just making sure everyone's safe." He lingered for a moment, his eyes scanning the room, then turned and walked away. June leaned in. "What happened?" Diana hesitated. She didn't want to scare June. She didn't want to confuse Arthur. She didn't want to jump to conclusions. But she couldn't ignore what she'd seen. "They're making lists," she whispered. "Names. Ours." June's knitting needles froze mid-air. Arthur closed his eyes, and the building hummed around them, low, tense, alive. Something was happening seriously at Gellis Living, and Diana was finally starting to understand just how deep it went. Chapter 5. The Man in the Middle. Diana didn't know how long she sat in the lounge after the list incident. Time felt slippery, like it was sliding past her in uneven waves. June knitted without speaking, her needles clicking in a nervous rhythm. Arthur stared at the muted television, his foot tapping restlessly against the carpet. The building hummed around them, low, tense, alive. Finally, June broke the silence. "You shouldn't have gone down that hallway alone." Diana sighed. "I wasn't alone. Arthur was there." Arthur didn't look away from the screen. "I wasn't supposed to be." June frowned. "What does that mean?" Arthur blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. Nothing, just talking. But Diana saw the truth in his eyes. He knew more than he could articulate, or more than he dared to. A caregiver entered the lounge then, her smile too bright, her voice too cheerful. "All right, everyone, time for evening wind down. Let's get cozy." June muttered under her breath, "We're not toddlers." The caregiver didn't hear her, or pretended not to. She moved around the room, adjusting blankets, dimming lights, straightening magazines. Her movements were quick, efficient, rehearsed. Diana watched her closely. The caregiver paused near Arthur, checking his chart. "Arthur, sweetheart, I'll bring your night meds in a bit." Arthur stiffened. "I don't want them." The caregiver's smile didn't falter. "Doctor's orders." Arthur's jaw tightened. "They make me foggy." The caregiver's voice softened, but her eyes didn't. "It's for your safety." Diana felt a surge of anger. He said no. The caregiver turned to her, still smiling. "Diana, dear, let us handle it." Diana held her gaze. He said no. The caregiver's smile thinned. "We'll talk about it later." She walked away before Diana could respond. June leaned in. "They're pushing harder." Diana nodded. "I know." A shadow moved in the hallway. Fred. He stepped into the lounge with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged everywhere. His presence filled the room, not imposing but undeniable. He scanned the residence, his expression calm, controlled, unreadable. When his eyes landed on Diana, something flickered behind them. Not anger, not suspicion, something like concern. He approached slowly. "Diana, how are you feeling tonight?" She straightened. "Fine." He studied her face. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep well." "I'm sorry to hear that." His voice was gentle, but his posture was tense, shoulders slightly raised, hands clasped behind his back, like a man holding something fragile. Diana hesitated. "Fred, what's happening tonight?" His expression didn't change. "What do you mean?" "The staff are nervous. The routines are different. People are whispering." Fred's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Change can make people uneasy." "That's not an answer." He paused. Too long, too careful. "Diana," he said softly, "sometimes it's better not to worry about things that aren't your responsibility." She felt a spark of frustration. "We live here. Everything is our responsibility." Fred's eyes softened, a rare crack in his polished exterior. "I know you're perceptive, more than most." Diana's breath caught. "Then tell me the truth." He shook his head. "I can't." "Why not?" Another pause, this one heavier. "Because it wouldn't help you," he said quietly. Diana stared at him. "You're in the middle of something, Fred. I can see it." His eyes flickered, a flash of something like pain. "You're imagining things." "No," she said firmly. "I'm not." He looked away, exhaling slowly. "Diana, please let us handle it." She stepped closer. "Are you in danger?" Fred's eyes snapped back to hers, sharp, startled, vulnerable. For a moment he looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, wind whipping at his back. Then the mask returned. "I'm fine," he said. "And so are you." He turned to leave. "Fred," she called after him. He stopped, but didn't turn around. "Are we safe?" she asked. A long silence. Finally, he said, "You're safer when you stay where you're supposed to be." Then he walked away. June exhaled shakily. "That wasn't comforting." Arthur whispered, "He's scared." Diana watched Fred disappear down the hallway, her heart pounding. He wasn't the villain. He wasn't the mastermind. He probably has a part in it, but he was the man in the middle, caught between the residents he cared for and the orders he couldn't refuse. And that made him the most dangerous kind of person. A good man trapped in a bad system? Diana sat back down, her mind racing. Something was brewing at Gellis Living, and Fred was trying and failing to keep it from reaching them. Chapter 6. The Box That Won't Stay Closed. Diana didn't return to her room right away. She lingered in the lounge long after Fred left, long after the caregivers finished their rounds, long after most of the residents drifted off to bed. June eventually dozed in her chair, her knitting resting in her lap. Arthur sat with his eyes closed, but Diana could tell he wasn't asleep. His fingers twitched every few seconds, like he was listening for something only he could hear. The building felt different now, not tense, not restless, something else, like it was waiting. Diana stood slowly, careful not to wake June. She stepped into the hallway, letting the quiet settle around her. The lights were dimmed to their nighttime glow, casting long shadows across the carpet. She walked without thinking, her feet carrying her down the corridor toward the administrative wing. She wasn't sneaking, she was simply wandering, the way residents often did when sleep refused to come. But tonight her wandering had purpose. She reached the corner near the staff offices and paused. The hallway was empty, the air felt still. She took a breath and stepped forward. Fred's office door was open, wide open. That alone was wrong. Fred never left his door open. He locked everything, his office, his files, his expressions. But tonight, the door stood open like an invitation, or a warning. Diana hesitated, her heart pounding. She wasn't supposed to be here. Residents didn't belong in administrative areas, but the door was open, and she was tired of being kept in the dark. She stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the desk lamp. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Everything was neat, orderly, precise, just like Fred. Except for one thing, the box. The same box she had seen once before, weeks ago, when Fred had quickly shut it and pretended it was nothing. Tonight it sat on the desk, closed, but not locked. Her breath caught. She approached slowly, her fingers trembling. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. The box itself was a message, a breadcrumb, a clue left in plain sight. Fred had removed it earlier. Someone had moved it again. Someone wanted her to see it, or someone wanted her to think she wasn't supposed to. She reached out and touched the lid. A soft rustle behind her made her freeze. She turned. Fred stood in the doorway. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't even stern. He looked tired. "Diana," he said quietly, "you shouldn't be in here." She swallowed. The door was open. "I know." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The click echoed through the small room. Diana's pulse quickened. "Fred, what's happening?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her, gently closed the box, and placed it on the shelf behind his desk. His movements were slow, deliberate, like a man performing a ritual he didn't believe in anymore. "Residents aren't allowed in this area," he said softly. "I know," she whispered, "but I had to understand." Fred paused, his back still turned to her. "Understand what?" "That something is wrong here." He didn't move. "Arthur's meds," she continued. "June's fear, the staff whispering, the lists, the new pills, the way everyone's acting." Fred's shoulders tensed. "And you," she said. "You're everywhere, watching everything, trying to keep something from spilling over." He turned slowly. His expression was unreadable, calm on the surface, but his eyes betrayed him. They were tired, heavy, haunted. "Diana," he said, "you're imagining patterns that aren't there." "No," she said firmly. "I'm seeing patterns you're trying to hide." A flicker of emotion crossed his face. Not anger, not guilt, fear. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to let this go." "I can't." "You have to." "Why?" He hesitated. For the first time since she'd known him, Fred looked lost, like a man standing in a room full of locked doors, holding keys that didn't belong to him. "Because asking questions here doesn't lead to answers," he said quietly. "It leads to consequences." Diana felt a chill crawl up her spine. For who? Fred didn't answer. He didn't need to. She understood. For him, for the staff, for the residents, for anyone who stepped out of line. He stepped back, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please go back to your room." Diana swallowed hard. "Fred, are we safe?" A long silence. Finally, he said, "You're safer when you stay where you're supposed to be." The same words as before, but tonight they sounded different, not like a warning, like a plea. Diana nodded slowly and walked past him. She stepped into the hallway, her legs trembling. When she reached the corner, she looked back. Fred was still standing in the doorway, watching her leave, not as a supervisor, not as an authority figure, but as a man caught in a storm he couldn't stop. She returned to her room, closed the door, and leaned against it. Her heart pounded, her mind raced, her hands shook. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small slip of paper she'd found earlier, the one she hadn't shown June or Arthur, the one she'd found tucked under her door after dinner. A single sentence written in Fred's precise handwriting. "You're asking the right questions, but you're not ready for the answers. Not yet." Diana stared at the words, her breath unsteady. The box was gone. The lists were hidden. The staff were nervous. The routines were shifting. Fred was trapped, and upper management was tightening its grip. Something was occurring at Gellis Living, and now they knew she was looking. Book 2 trailer, The Gellis Living Chronicles. The Intermediary. In the quiet hours of Gellis Living, the night has stopped pretending. The routines that once felt comforting now feel rehearsed. The smiles that once felt warm now feel practiced. And the staff who once felt familiar move like people carrying secrets too heavy to hold. Diana Marquez has seen enough to know the truth is close enough to touch, close enough to fear. But the deeper she looks, the more the building changes around her. Residents whisper about strange dreams. Arthur feels the fog closing in again. June watches the staff with a knitter's precision, counting every misstep, every tremor, every lie. And Fred walks the halls like a man caught between two worlds, the one he serves and the one he's trying to protect. Upper management's directives tighten. New protocols roll out without explanation, and the lists, the ones Diana was never meant to see, grow longer. In Book 2, the walls of Gellis Living stop hiding the truth and start revealing it. A misplaced memo, a resident who remembers too much, a staff member who breaks under pressure, a door left open at the wrong time, a voice on the phone Diana has never heard before. Every clue pulls her deeper. Every discovery raises the stakes. Every step forward makes her a threat, because someone inside Gellis Living is watching her, someone who knows she's asking questions, someone who knows she won't stop, and someone who has everything to lose if she finds the truth. Book 2 is not about what's happening at Gellis Living. It's about who is making it happen and how far they're willing to go to keep Diana quiet. The Gellis Living Chronicles continue, and this time, the danger isn't in the shadows, it's standing right beside her. And Book 1 ended not with answers, but with the unmistakable sense that Gellis Living was only beginning to reveal its secrets. A fictional mystery inspired by real experiences in assisted and memory care. Truths are revealed, and the next chapter is already knocking. Like, subscribe, and catch up on episodes 1 to 4 before diving into this unforgettable conclusion. And stay tuned for Book 2.